Well, hello and good evening to this Expats Portugal Calling webinar tonight in association with Holborn Assets. It's tax efficient tips and financial planning for expats in Portugal. With me tonight, Henry Kent and Marianne Anderson. How are you doing, Marianne?
Good, thank you. How are you all?
We're very wet here in Portugal tonight. We were in the middle of a storm, it feels like, a slight lull at the moment. So it's good to be talking to you again tonight. Where are you this evening?
I'm in London and it's very wet in London too.
Sorry to hear that. Henry's in Barcelona. How are you?
Very well, sir. Thank you. Yeah, it's there's a storm incoming here at the moment as well. The wind's picked up, and I imagine that it's going to rain all through the night here.
Wow. Okay. Well, normally we can speak of the excellent weather and lifestyle here in Portugal. A little bit of an exception tonight. And we have a webinar tonight for you where we'll cover an introduction to Holborn Assets. There'll be essential advice, everything financial you should consider before you move, and for when you become a tax resident in Portugal as well, facilitated here by Henry and Marianne. There'll be an update on the all-important controversy around the NHR, the non-habitual residency program, and we'll also be talking about investment services for US-connected clients, for those of you in the United States of America, and of course, a chance for a Q&A. Henry will take it away with a bit of a presentation. I'll keep an eye on the chat and to the Q&A box. So please if there's anything you want to know about, anything that you want clarified, put that in the chat or the Q&A, and I'll make sure it's covered this evening. So over to you, Henry.
Thank you, Carl. Appreciate that. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're speaking from this evening. From the introduction for Carl, it will be myself today, covering some aspects on the essential tips that come up regularly in my introduction meetings with potential clients who are looking to move to Portugal or already in Portugal. And then I'm lucky enough to be joined by Marianne here, the investment specialist at Evelyn Partners. So I'll start off with an introduction to Holborn Assets. I know we've done some webinars with Expats Portugal, articles, and my colleague Jason has also done some for the Golden Visa. However, for anyone that's new here, just to give a brief introduction, we're a global wealth management company. We specialize in providing cross-border financial advice to expats. As a company, we were established in 1998 by a British family, and since then we've grown exponentially. We've expanded to now where we have 22 international offices globally. That includes Portugal and also Spain, where I'm lucky enough to be situated, and we have 500 plus employees, 20,000 clients, and over 3.2 billion in assets under management. We're a multi-award winning company. Just this week, actually, in the Oscars, you could say, of the international financial services, we've picked up another 4 awards, which this will be updated on our next one, and this will be reflected by our 5-star rating on Trustpilot.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So jumping in, the essential advice before making the move. These are 4 areas that come up time and time again on nearly all of the introduction meetings that I have with prospective clients. So it's the ones that I just want to cover today. Obviously, there's many caveats with financial planning and nuances, but these are the ones that need to be considered for the majority of people who are looking to move. So the first one is the importance of financial planning before you make the move. I know that seems quite obvious. However, it is imperative. Understanding your expected outgoings, your lifestyle expenses in Portugal, and then looking at your income, what's going to be covering these expenses, whether that's pensions, investments, rental income, which may have changed with the new rules with the NHR. However, it's imperative to make sure that your time in Portugal is the time that you want there. But for anyone who's in the very early stages of looking, there's a fantastic website called Numbeo, where you can go on and you can choose a location, and it tells you the sort of cost of living, general expenses, whether that's eating out, rental, bills, utility bills, and so on. So you can sort of gauge and get an understanding of various places around Portugal and the costs with living there. That moves me on then to the pension and investment planning. This sort of ties in with the one above, but are your pensions and investments prepared for Portugal? So what that means is there's various investment structures from Canada to the US to the UK, which are highly tax efficient once when you're living in that country. However, when you move to Portugal, they're no longer going to have the tax benefits that they did have in your previous country. An example of that is the individual savings account, the ISA, from a UK perspective. While they're highly tax efficient from a UK point of view, once you make the move, Portugal will not see them as tax efficient, and they'll be subject to capital gains when sold and potentially income tax as well. So I say it all the time, but be proactive rather than reactive to these financial situations. Plan ahead. Obviously, there's various investment structures out there. I'd be more than happy to sit down on a one-to-one meeting, run through your situation, what you have, look at the taxation aspect, and see whether or not there are any potential options out there that could be better aligned for your time in Portugal. Then what to do with your home. This has changed considerably over the last couple of days with clients who wanted to sort of hold on to any properties for rental income purposes or to keep their base back in their country of origin. With the changes in the NHR, that rental income is no longer going to be tax exempt if you're not sort of applied and got NHR before the deadline of the end of the year. I know it's a difficult one because there's that emotional aspect to a property as well. You having your family home, it's a big decision to consider selling. So it's not all just financially related. So it's a bit of a tough one. However, considerations need to be made. And also in some countries, there are tax concessions when selling your main residence, whether that be on capital gains and various other taxes as well.
Before you go on to your next point there, Henry, I've
Yeah.
got a message to say that the chat is not working for some people. So if I could ask people to put
Right.
Yeah, just if you will, use the Q&A because I can definitely see those. And thank you for everybody who's already asked questions in there. So if you could focus on the Q&A rather than the chat tonight, that would be great. Sorry, Henry, to interrupt.
No problem. No problem. The fourth and final one is understand the difference in taxation. The general rule of thumb is if you spend over 183 days of a calendar year within one country, whether that's globally, then you are technically a tax resident of that country, and you have to report in some instances worldwide income and assets, and that is the general rule across Europe. Yeah, in some instances, I've had with some clients who pay tax on rental income from a UK point of view, let's say, because it's taxed at source. So they consider themselves a tax resident of the UK, but they're spending over 183 days in Portugal. And if that is the case, you do have to declare worldwide income and assets, not to put yourself in any sort of bad positions from a tax point of view further down the line.
And it does seem like a strange number, doesn't it? But of course, it represents more than half the year, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, indeed. Any questions on that?
I
slide?
think I'm going to hold the questions for now. There are many coming forward in the Q&A box, so thank you for those. But yeah, do carry on, and I'll group together as many questions as I can on the more universal themes here.
Perfect, fantastic. So that's everything that comes up in initial introduction meetings for potential clients who are looking to move abroad. These are the areas that need to be considered. Obviously, everyone's circumstances are different. So if anyone does want to sort of look into personalized advice or answers on any of these, then I'm going to include a QR code and also my contact details at the end of this webinar, where they can book in for an introduction meeting with me, and we can go into everything in full detail, and I'll be able to answer as many questions or queries specific to individuals. So moving us on, essential advice when you become a tax resident in Portugal. Right, okay, this is a bit of a difficult, registering under NHR, what are the potential benefits? It's going to be a bit difficult, because under the interpretations that we've been made aware of, that the deadline will be the end of this year. So anyone who hasn't got a visa or is in Portugal, I'm not sure whether or not it will be available or possible, depending on where you are with the process. But it's very rare that someone's not better off for registering for NHR. And as we know, previously under the old rules, they had until the 31st of March the following year of making the move to make that application. But yeah, I touch on a bit of an update on that. I know with the Dream Team get together this evening as well, there's a gentleman who will be speaking in detail about taxation, what the changes will be in regards to personal income tax. So any questions related to that, I think that would be better aligned to him to cover. What would you say, Carl?
Yeah, agreed, Henry. I mean, you're certainly making reference to it tonight, and we will pick it up and run with it from 9 on the Dream Team session that Henry mentions there. And I'll do my best to get that link to you as well. You can access that via the expatsportugal.com, via the website as well, to get the link for 9 o'clock. But yeah, thanks for mentioning that. And there will be a special focus, because it is, I don't know how it was for you, Henry, but when this news came out, announced as it was by the Prime Minister, Antonio Costa, on the news late one night, it's caused quite the flurry and turbulence in the whole business of moving to Portugal. How has it been at the Holborn offices receiving the news?
It was a big surprise, a very big surprise, wasn't it? I don't think that was the main reason for a lot of people moving to Portugal, but it was a huge benefit.
Bonus,
so a lot of people have reacted to the news, but yeah, we were as surprised as everyone with it. So we'll have to wait and see what the changes will be and the interpretation of the proposed law.
Absolutely, and a special focus on that from 9 o'clock tonight as well. Yeah, thank you for that, Henry.
No problem. The next one is, do you rent or do you buy? This is not something that we specifically as a company advise on. However, it needs to be considered. I've had meetings with some people who jumped straight in and decided to buy without spending time traveling, deciding on where they wanted to be in Portugal, and not necessarily had regrets, but potentially would have chose a different location. And we know with the taxes, when buying property in Portugal, they can be up to 10% on a property purchase. So I always advise, I think you feel the same, Carl, is rent, first of all, get boots on the ground, understand Portugal, understand the locations where you feel most at home that you'll be spending your future at before looking to purchase.
Yeah, I think that is a good idea. Obviously, it's personal preference and not telling anyone what to do. But the base camp has proven to be very useful for a lot of people to come and maybe rent for a year or so and get their bearings and see what they want to do and find out where they want to live in Portugal, for sure.
No, I agree. The next one is an accountant necessary. Usually this would be once you're there, but now given with all these changes with the NHR and everyone's worried about how their worldwide income, how their assets will be taxed, I think this maybe should have been before. Sit down, find someone who understands the dual taxation, both jurisdictions, but I'm sure that will be covered again this evening for the majority of the members. But yeah, in my eyes now, especially, definitely, it will be worth the fees associated to get that structured correctly.
Roman has asked that question. I'm looking for someone who could do my Portugal and USA taxes. Now, that's not usually the same person. I'm sure Marianne will have something to say on this. You need to consult both sides of the water, don't you? There are very few professionals who can do both for you. And I take your point completely there, Henry. Like your general advice to don't leave things too late and tackle it before you move, get your ducks in a row before you move. This is certainly one of those areas, isn't it, Marianne?
Absolutely. So generally, especially for somebody coming from the US, we always say get advice at JFK before you land at your destination, because it impacts. In terms of having your taxation done by, sorry, I've just clicked my video off, apologies. In terms of taxation and accountants, if you are a dual tax filer, so you need to file in the States regardless, and then wherever you are resident, we would also always say seek tax advice. From our perspective, there are many accountants that are dual aware. So it's the understanding of finding somebody that can understand your US taxation. So where I work at Evelyn Partners, we have US taxation specialists we can introduce you to. They're also UK tax specialists, but they have a group of firms that they work with within Europe. So they're working together rather than independently, because, for example, if you have somebody in Portugal filing your Portuguese taxes and somebody else filing your US taxes, they may be conflicting to each other. So you need people to work together ideally, or at least have sight of what the other one is doing. So one set of taxation doesn't conflict with the other set of taxation and mess things up for you. That generally, as a general rule of thumb, is a real exception for a US citizen, green card, anybody that's required to file a US tax return. You need somebody that understands it, is the real answer. I think globally, you're in company for worldwide taxation as a US tax filer with Eritrea and North Korea at the moment. So
fascinating, isn't it? Yeah,
it's a real small group, and I don't see the US stopping worldwide taxation anytime soon. So unfortunately, you are stuck in that middle bit of wherever you're resident, you're still going to have to file your US taxes, and you need somebody in both jurisdictions that can speak with each other and understand what the other's doing, so you don't end up with a hefty tax bill or pay too much tax.
Yeah,
or on the wrong side of Uncle Sam.
Absolutely. So yeah, thank you for that. And clearly, it's not something you offer as a service, but you can refer. You don't, Holborn don't specifically do that, but can help you out. As can Expats Portugal in the business directory. You can find people who can assist with the filing of taxes and tax advice. Anonymous attendee on the call is asking, doesn't DTT, the dual taxation treaty, help in moderating tax liabilities? In theory, it does. But really, again, it comes back to working with the right professionals, doesn't it, to make that, to minimise that liability, if you like. So thank you for that question as well. Thanks for dealing with that, Marianne.
No worries.
Yeah. Even with the DTA, you're still going to have to report on both sides. So, yeah.
Okay. So
and then and then the last one: how important is a financial advisor? Well, I have my bias, clearly, but I would say very. In the pre-planning stage for once in Portugal, making sure your finances are in order, they're structured correctly from a dual taxation point of view again. And for lifestyle expenses, outgoings, cash flow, making sure your time in Portugal is the best time that you can make of it.
Excellent, thank you.
One investment option that I'd just like to touch on, which is one of the most popular. Unfortunately, US nationals are exempt from this type of investment structure due to FATCA legislation and reporting purposes. But a very popular investment sort of structure is the Portuguese compliant investment. It goes by many names, but it's a tax efficient unit linked investment. It's usually held in an offshore jurisdiction, such as Ireland, Dublin, and it's highly tax efficient because the longer you hold it, the reduction on capital gains that you pay. I've included the graph there, which shows, but after sort of 8 years, that can reduce that capital gains tax payable by 60%. Okay, for people with NHR, if you start planning now, but when you come to the end of your NHR, you can then potentially have a 60% reduction if you put the planning into place earlier. And I was reading an article earlier, it said 23% of retirees and expats who have the NHR are underprepared for when that ends. And this is a solution that will be highly tax efficient, and will be a lot of benefit once you come to that end of the NHR period. But yeah, just to sort of run through that, it's only the growth that is taxed, and that's only when a withdrawal is made, because it's in an international jurisdiction. It's portable to many other countries, and for anyone who has, let's say, from just speaking from a UK perspective, stocks and shares ISAs who have managed or mutual funds or investment strategies within them, these type of investments are open architecture. So it doesn't mean that you have to change your investment strategy. You can keep that strategy, but just structuring it in a way that will reduce your tax payable in Portugal, and it's completely flexible for income and withdrawals. But a little known tip as well, I've helped 2 clients with this. If anyone further down the line or at this moment in time is considering downsizing property in Portugal, and you want to purchase a new property and there's surplus cash left over, if you look at investing into this type of portfolio and it's reinvested into a Portuguese compliant investment, it completely mitigates any capital gains tax that's liable on that property. So it's a way of reducing that considerably in Portugal. There are some caveats to consider. To qualify, you must be retired and over 65 years of age. Also, it needs to be done within 6 months of the property sale. I had an individual reach out to me and it was at the 9-month mark, and we missed out on that. But this is all done on suitability, this type of investment, where I can run through any any questions, answer any queries if anyone wants to speak about this on a one-to-one meeting due to the suitability need. And then the final part is the NHR update, which is probably on quite a lot of people's mind. The tax regime is coming to an end, unfortunately, for new entrants in 2024. On the 2nd of this month, Prime Minister Antonio Costa announced that the programme will be ending. It seems, from my conversations with lawyers, the application's deadline will be the 31st of December 2023. However, Portugal have managed to write a proposed law that has 3 completely different interpretations from 3 different lawyers that I've spoken with, each of them equally possible. But they've all agreed that the deadline will be the 31st of December, but full clarification is expected on this at a later stage. But this will change a lot of people's financial planning. People who were relying on foreign properties, rental income, which usually under the NHR would have been exempt, is no longer going to be the case. And also the pensions, that would have been 10%. That's now going to increase as well. So more important than ever to plan your finances before and I'll say it again, be proactive rather than reactive with this.
We don't know either whether there will be any sort of mitigating circumstances or allowances made past the deadline for people who, through no fault of their own, haven't been able to make the necessary adjustments and applications, because we're already in a situation with the the border force CEF and finances to some extent as well, whereby these departments are understaffed, going through reorganization, those sort of things. So it's very complicated, and it was slow anyway, and this is likely to cause even more confusion and slow things down. So it's quite it's a difficult picture, isn't it, with what's going on, and that's not far away, that deadline.
No. And the uncertainty, people don't like uncertainty either. When there's no full clarification, it makes your planning very difficult. So we'll have to wait and see.
And I'm sure you're when you do have received that clarification and we've got something to work with, we'll be the first to know. Yeah,
definitely. It will either be myself or my colleague Jason on the Golden Visa webinars who will be clarifying this. Daniel, I'm sure as well, will be speaking about this. So all the members and everyone from Expats Portugal will be fully made aware.
All right, thanks for that.
No problem. I'm going to pass the microphone over to Mary-Ann and cover her services and the areas that we assist with US connected clients. So over to you, Mary-Ann.
Thanks, Henry. Good evening, everybody. So wherever you are, I hope that you've got better weather than we seem to be having, where we all are. Just a brief introduction. So my name's Mary-Ann, obviously. I work for a company called Evelyn Partners, and we are unusual in Europe because we have an SEC license, which means we are regulated to give advice directly into the US. As well as being able to give advice into the US, we also have experience, I suppose that's quite obvious, of dealing with US connected clients. Now, when I speak about US connected clients, I'm speaking about anybody that is required to file a US tax return globally. So we have clients worldwide, and they have that specialism where there's not many places that actually will deal with an American, as I'm sure many of you guys have come across. As soon as you say, I've got a green card or I've got citizenship in the States, most financial institutions want to close the doors because FATCA has such an onerous compliance implication on the business. So within Evelyn Partners, there's a small team of us, out of the 3,000 staff and hundreds of investment managers that we have actually deal with US clients. So it means that you have specialist advice by specialists dealing with it, which is why there's not that many. I think there's about 6 of us within the company. And we are able to then draw on the bigger scale of the company in terms of investment research, resources, administration. So we can provide a good service, almost like a boutique field service, but you're going to get the same investment knowledge and advice as if you're in the States. So if you have a broker at the moment, so I'm called an investment manager in the UK, in the States, you know, it's probably a broker dealer or relationship manager. We all do the same job. So if you have a Charles Schwab or a Merrill Lynch portfolio, we're doing the same. We have custody in the US with Pershing Advisor Solutions, which are part of the Bank of New York. They're one of the biggest custodians globally. For those of you that don't know, a custodian is where your money is held. So your money would remain generally in the States, looked after by Pershing. The reason we like to have that custodian is really from an administration perspective. They produce your 1099 reports, and I've seen many non-US custodians try and produce a 1099 report, and they're not great, because it's trying to fudge a system basically. So if you have a US institution completing them, it makes filing the returns a lot simpler. And also then, because your assets are held in the States, for those of you that take a great interest in your tax returns, it means it doesn't have to go on your FR either. I'm not a tax advisor. I work very closely with a team of tax advisors we have internally that are US tax advisors. But to look after a US person, you have to be tax aware. We have to be tax aware in what we're doing for you. We offer an investment management service, and we work really closely with Holborn with our US clients who offer the financial planning service. In the States, generally, they're one and the same. Because I'm a UK regulated advisor, in the UK, they're split out. So you have somebody to look after the investments and somebody to look after the planning. So there's different things that we can advise on. For example, a UK or a European investment manager generally can't advise on pensions. So that's where the financial planners are really important, because they can advise on pensions. Unusually though, because I have an SEC license, I can advise on US pensions, where Henry may not be able to in those circumstances. So if you have IRA accounts or 401ks that you want to roll over into an IRA, we're able to provide full advice for your US products, because generally, if you've got a US product, it's not recognised in Europe. And vice versa, if you had a European product, it's not recognised in the States. And sometimes they can cause real tax issues if you don't have the right investment set up. So that's where we come in. And in terms of tax advice, I've just seen it on the slide, so I'll touch on it briefly. we do have in-house tax services. But if you have a general query, and you hate me for saying this, but I believe in getting the most out of your money, and obviously everybody charges a fee. So, if you have a general inquiry, let Henry or myself know, and then I'll go and ask the tax advisors for a general answer. So it's not specific advice, but a general answer, and it means you haven't paid $500 for a 3-word answer on an email, because I'm going to get that answer for you. Which is, I think, is always a benefit if we can save money for you wherever we can.
Very good.
Definitely.
Thank you. I'll talk about our portfolios. Sorry, Henry, I think I've covered that. Whoever's moving the slide.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's covered. I don't want to talk to you so much about the regulations and everything else.
No.
From your perspective, you guys really just need somebody that you know knows what they're doing, understands your taxes, and can deal with you outside of the States. In terms of the portfolios that we run, and I'll speak about them quite quickly because each individual case is different, but we have risk-rated portfolios, which in simple terms means we have a conversation with Henry, we have a conversation with you if needed, and we decide how much risk is suitable for you to take. Once we know that, we can construct a portfolio so that the investments are tax compliant in the States and tax compliant wherever you're living. And that makes that portfolio portable. So if you decide to live in Portugal and then you think, actually, no, enough of all this sunshine, I'm going to move to the grey UK, or I want to go to France, those portfolios will move with you because they're compliant from a European perspective and compliant from a UK perspective. And we always have to be aware that whatever we're doing for you, the implications from a taxation perspective. And I know somebody's bound to ask, in terms of performance, how do they perform then? They perform really well, our portfolios in general, and I can't say, they're going to go through the roof each year. But we compare our portfolios to a benchmark called ARC, which, feel free to Google, they're asset risk consultants. And they take data from all of the investment managers at the risk-rated level of portfolios. So you get an average return for the amount of risk you're taking. And it's a real comparator to me because it's placing us against our competitors in the market. How are we doing against our competitors in the market? And our portfolios at the moment are all outperforming ARC. And you can look that up yourself. Obviously, if you wanted to have further conversations, we can give you that data. But it's there and it's available for you if you wanted to look that up as well. And they're a third party, so it makes it independent. It's not me just telling you how the performance works. It is independent. That's all I have really. Unless anybody has some specific questions, I'll have a quick look through the Q&A and see if there's anything.
Well, we'll get to those. We've got a good stack of questions. It's great. So thank you, everybody. We will get to those. If that's all right with you, Marianne, and thank you
that's absolutely
for
fine.
your contribution there.
Thanks, Marianne.
Work through those. And this is the big QR code moment, isn't it? Now,
yes,
people who've been left behind with this sort of technology, we might need a guide to that as well, Henry. What do you need to do here?
For anyone that wants to book in for a complimentary Zoom, Teams, or telephone meeting or call, if you scan the QR code, it's all fancy now, you can be taken directly through to the Calendly from my diary and arrange a short complimentary meeting at a suited time when free.
That's great. Excellent. I'm just testing it. It works. All you have to do is most smartphones now, if you haven't used this technology before, most smartphones, if you just hold up your camera, it will give you a link to click through to, and that will take you through, as Henry's saying there, to be able to set up a complimentary call with him.
Yeah.
So before we get to the questions, anything else you want to add, Henry?
I think that's everything. For anyone that's wanting sort of to understand previous performance, sort of their options, proposals, I advise just booking in. We can sit down, we can run through your situation, I can answer any questions or queries. We can see if our services, mine and Marianne's, are going to be suited or of benefit. If so, then what I can do is prepare some sort of proposals after that introductory meeting and send them over via email. That way we can all sit down together on our next meeting and run through it together. But no, for now, just the essential tips to consider. We can't be too specific. It needs to be quite generalized on a webinar. But yeah, for anyone that wants personalized or specific questions, either scan the QR code, book in for a meeting. My email's there, and also my Spanish telephone number that I can be contacted on WhatsApp as well. But for anyone that wants our corporate brochure, we do offer also a free Portugal tax guide. If anyone wants to see that, just drop me a message, drop me an email, book in, and we can get that going.
That sounds so glamorous. My Spanish phone number. Thank you for that, Henry. We'll get to questions in just a moment. Anything else you wanted to say in conclusion for the time being there, Marianne? Certainly one key message is be proactive rather than reactive, right?
Definitely. Just even if you're not 100% sure about the move, I'd always say speak to somebody and know the impact and the options that you have available. We're here to help. So whatever questions you have, there's nothing silly about asking a question, even if you think, oh no, it's not the right person or the right place. Henry and I have lots of connections through the US and globally, so we can find you an answer as well. Yeah. Ask away, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, and people are sometimes worried, aren't they, about asking silly questions? You know, this isn't everyday sort of information, is it? So don't feel, embarrassed about asking what seems like a silly question. It's often the way, isn't it, where you ask what seems to be a silly question, and lots of other people on the call or in the room are really relieved that you did. So go ahead and do that. Let's have a look at a few of those now. Gilbert was really quick off the mark. If an American retires in Portugal, how are withdrawal from retirement accounts and social security? I think there's a typo there, but that probably means social security taxed, given that one already would have tax obligations for the USA. Who wants to pick that up?
I can pick that up.
Mary.
Yeah, so I'm not a tax advisor, I can't give tax advice, but generally it will be taxed the same. So as a general rule of thumb, you would be taxed in the country where you're a resident, and then you file your tax returns and you either pay the additional tax to the state if the tax is higher, or you get a tax credit in the state. For social security that's taxed as income, that's fine. For an IRA account, it depends whether you've got a Roth or a traditional as to whether there's taxation due on it. In most cases now, the US tax is withheld at source for that. So if the tax is withheld at source in the States, it's paid and you don't have to worry about it. I would imagine that you still have to file it, both where you're resident and in the States, but generally it's taxed at source now. Yeah,
thank you, Marianne. And thank you, Gilbert, for the question. And as Marianne says, it's a general rule worth diving a bit deeper with your specific circumstances with the appropriate professional there. Thank you, Gilbert, for that question. Let's go to Erica, who was also early in with a question, thanking us for the webinar. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, Erica. And the questions are, what is the maximum deductible amount? This sounds like it might be one for the dream team and the tax advisor, but what is the maximum deductible, and this is in Portuguese tax terms, for the VAT, known as IVA here, I'm paying to my landlord in Portugal? You're paying VAT to your landlord. That does sound like one for the dream team, doesn't it? Should we carry that forward to later on? Okay, so tune in for that, Erica. Under the NHR, will I pay taxes in Portugal on my American income, given that I already pay taxes in the USA on my American income? Now, you kind of touched on that, Marianne, but could you go into that question specifically there for Erica?
Absolutely. So again, I can't give tax advice. I just have to say my apologies. Under the dual taxation treaty, you are only taxed once, which is the whole purpose of having the dual taxation treaty. If you're paying tax in the States, you're not going to pay tax in Portugal. Again, speak to an accountant, both a Portuguese and a US accountant, and Henry and I can help you with contacts for those. I'm pretty sure you need to file it, but you're only ever going to pay it in one jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for those questions, Erica. If you need further clarification, you know where we are. Amit, good evening to you. Oh, quick question for my Expats Portugal colleagues. If you could put the Dream Team link in the Q&A, that would be awesome. And then anyone who asks me for that, I can forward it on to them. Amit, good to see you here tonight. Does Holborn require management of the client's portfolio, Or will you advise people as a financial expert without managing all their assets for a fee? Of course, he includes in brackets there. So do you want everything, Henry, when you're working with people, or can you advise for a fee on specific parts of advice?
Yeah, it completely depends on the advice that's being provided. It's yeah, that can be absolutely fine. We can do that.
So you're not asking for complete control of the portfolio?
No, not at all. No.
That's what's behind Amit's question. It's a good question. Thank you. And Barry, this is a good one as well. What if they're under the 183 days in Portugal by staying in France during that time? That's just like a tax tango, isn't it? Moving around to not be. I think you might have heard this sort of question before, Henry. What would you say?
Well, again, it's the 183-day rule. If you're then spending over 183 days of the year in France, then you'll be tax resident of France and you'll have to declare your worldwide income and assets to France rather than Portugal.
Right. Okay.
Can I just add in on that one as well?
Go on, Mary.
Barry, if you are a US citizen, we can help you wherever you are, and a tax advisor can help you wherever you are. Generally, French and US tax regimes don't gel very well. It's the worst place to live. I have clients that have their life in France, but live over the border in Switzerland because from a taxation perspective, it's much easier. Just because what the French recognise as tax efficient, the US don't, and vice versa. And there's a very small middle ground. So it's doable, but for some clients, it is easier to live across a border in terms of the amount of tax they're paying.
That's fascinating, and probably says a lot about the relationship, the interesting relationship the French and Americans have with each other there. So that's a really good insight, Mary-Anne. Thank you for that. Barry, I hope that's useful. Anonymous, hi there. Are there areas of Portugal that are more local tax friendly than others? That's a good question. Again, it's a tax one, not so much for Mary-Anne or Henry. Might be a good one for the dream team, but it's not like America where you're paying local sales tax. Sales tax is the same across the country where it's applicable as EVA. So that's 23%. Did you want to add anything to that, Henry or Mary-Anne, from your own experience of dealing with clients there?
I'll jump in on one thing. In Spain, it does vary by each autonomous region. Right. But I don't believe that that's the case. But I'm not a tax advisor myself, but I don't believe that that's the case for Portugal.
Right. We can certainly put that to Duarte when we speak to him on the 9 o'clock dream team. Anonymous continues, I would have to pay both US and Portugal, right? In the way that has been described before. Yes, Anonymous. Thanks. Have to leave in 20 minutes for another call, but I will keep up with this group. Thanks. Please do, Anonymous. And of course, this is being recorded and will be available again for you to listen to the answer to your question in the future. Sometime we have these published at 6 o'clock on a Sunday evening. So that's when it will be available to you. Anonymous there. Ken, thank you. I know you can elect to file taxes jointly or separately if you're married. Is this an annual election, i.e. can it be joint in 1 year and later changed to married? Another good question there from Ken. What do you think, Mary-Anne?
I'm not 100% sure on that answer, Ken, but I'll find out for you and I'll let Henry and Cole know. I think there is a period you have to commit to if you're filing joint taxes, but I will double check for you and come back to you.
Okay, and the communications on that, is that your preference, Mary-Anne, for people to stay in touch with Henry, henry.kent@holbornassets.com for these?
Absolutely. Speak to Henry, book an appointment with him, and we'll have that information ready for you.
Great, that's for Ken. For Kaushal, good evening to you. Seems like the meeting is focused more on UK expats. No, maybe it seemed like that earlier on in the call, but Mary-Anne, as you said, Mary-Anne, a real exception in the UK scene to have that SEC validation as well. Makes you stand out head and shoulders above a lot of financial advisors in the UK. So not the case, Kaushal. I'm in California and the implications are very different. I will have rental income, dividends, and eventually social security. If you're talking about taxation, then of course follow the earlier advice, Kaushal. But we specifically have Mary-Anne here tonight to help with people stateside as well. John, but what rate is interest charged on an offshore, for example, interest-only mortgage account when resident in Portugal? I'm not entirely sure what that means. What does that mean to you, Mary-Anne?
I have no idea, John. If you're still here, if you could just give us a little bit further information. I'm not sure even if you mean something like an offshore bond, maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I've translated IOM as interest-only mortgage. Maybe I'm wrong with that. But the question is, at what rate is interest charged on an offshore e.g. IOM account when resident in Portugal. Do we need more information on that particular question?
Yeah, maybe it's an Isle of Man account.
Isle of Man, yeah, maybe.
Beg your pardon. That's a problem
Yeah.
with abbreviations and acronyms, isn't it? So what
Yeah.
if it is Isle of Man, what are the implications?
It depends where you are actually, John, as to what answers we give you. Again,
Yeah.
book in with Henry and we'll sit down and have a chat, work out your circumstances, and then we can give you some advice that's structured to you and your actual situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So John, sorry, I confused that with my interest-only mortgage instead of Isle of Man. Do I apologise for that? We can move on to Anonymous. How is rental income and capital gains treated under NHR from Dubai, the UAE? Is it tax exempt? Again, I think another one we should put to Duarte early on in the Dream Team session there. Join us over there. We should have the link for that soon. Gail, do you provide cross-border tax and investment advice to Canadians? I'm just in the process of retiring and I'm planning to move to Portugal in the fall of 24. Good luck with that process, Gail. Wishing you all the best with that. And of course, I suspect you're already a member of Expats Portugal and you'll get a lot of help there and on the forum. I want to get my pension and investments in order and optimize for Portuguese taxation. So for Canadians, can you help there, Marianne?
It depends what pensions you have, but
Yeah.
if we can't help specifically, I definitely know somebody that can help with the taxation. Depends on what type of pensions you have. But if I can't do it, I know somebody that can. So we can definitely, again, book in with Henry and we'll get you looked after, Gail.
Yeah.
Okay, Gail. Yes, moving to Portugal in the fall of 24. Hope that helps there. Mark, if I have not started an NHR application, from your experience, is it realistic to aim to acquire it before December the 31st this year? I am Netherlands citizen and USA resident, currently in Portugal to find my perfect location. Again, all the best with that, Mark, and your search over here. It's a lovely country in which to be searching for property, even though it is a bit rainy at the moment. But this, I mean, it's hard to say, isn't it, Henry? Is it realistic to think it might be done by the 31st of December? We don't really know that, do we?
No, it's not clear at the moment. But if he has a European passport, then the visa, which is usually the area that takes the most time, submitting the application before the deadline should be a possibility, but we don't know. Again.
As in, go to your local camera and show up as an EU citizen. Now, I understand with the Netherlands, they don't allow dual citizenship. I've heard. I take that with a pinch of salt, but it may be that Mark has chosen the USA residency over the Netherlands there. But it's also worth checking out with the Netherlands to see if that actually happened. Mark, because I've heard some interesting stories of people leaving the Netherlands thinking they've left the Netherlands as a resident, gone back and found out that they were never taken off the system. So there might be a nice little loophole for you if you check that out. It's just an anecdotal thing there. Thank you for your question. Patrick was saying, who did Ms. Anderson recommend? I think it was going back to your tax advice recommendation again, henry.kent@holbornassets.com to be in communication about that, if you will, Patrick. And John with another question, can I still apply for NHR if I'm not planning to be in Portugal until the first quarter of 24? I bought my property in Portugal 20 years ago. That's not going to happen, is it, Henry?
No, I believe you have to be a resident there before applying for NHR.
Yeah, you've got to be a tax resident to get that benefit, John. I don't know if that means moving your plans. But any offshore interest you continue outside of blacklist countries is also taxed at 28%. So what is the benefit of a Portuguese compliant bond? That's for you, Henry.
It's part of the European Union, so it's held in Ireland. So it's approved and structured for the Portuguese tax system. It's based on your NIF. So, yeah, it's not considered sort of...
Or blacklistable, if you like.
Blacklistable, yeah, exactly. It's...
All right, John, there you go. Sorry, I interrupted you there, Henry. Did you have more to say?
No, that was it. That was it.
All right, Michael, good to see you here. Is the NHR application automatically given if applied for and you comply with the requirements of the law? How long before you know if you have it? Now, that's going to be, that will have changed, won't it? How long does it take to find out? But
yeah,
you can't assume you've got it until you've got it, right, Henry?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's down to the interpretation of the proposed law as well. There are some lawyers that I've spoken with that are stating that that is the deadline, and then you have till the 31st of March to get approval.
Yeah.
But then there's others saying that it needs to be applied and approved before the end of the year. And then there's others saying a longer time frame. So until we get clarification on the proposed law, it's up in the air at the moment.
Okay, and with John, thanks for that, Henry. John is saying I'm a resident as of 23. You need to make sure you are have registered and changed your NIF status to a tax resident, I believe is the way forward, John, to qualify. So make sure you've got the right support and advice to do that. Joining the Dream Team session, I'm sure will be useful for you as well. Going back to all these excellent questions, thank you very much. I think we've helped you there, Michael. Let me know if we haven't. Lydia, we will only have government pensions, Canadian. Is there anything we can do to minimize taxation? It's not like investments where we can restructure or use different vehicles. That's a good question, isn't it, Marianne?
Absolutely. And Lydia, just looking briefly at your question, if they're government pensions, they're income, so you don't really have to worry about the structure. You're only going to pay tax where you're resident, because luckily Canada don't have the worldwide taxation that the States do. You can't minimise income tax, unfortunately, but it's income coming through. So it's actually quite simple for you. But again, give Henry a scan or a call, and we can have a look at your individual circumstances for you to make sure there may be an investment vehicle if you have excess income, etc., that we can help with, or Henry do some planning for you to make sure that you're getting the most out of your income that you've got coming through.
There you go, Lydia. Thank you for that, Marianne. Does a person need to change investment companies? This is for you, Henry. Or can we make Portuguese compliant investments from within our current broker?
It depends if your broker is licensed and regulated to provide advice on these type of structures. But speak with them. It depends on where they're based as well. There's many variables that need to be considered, but also suitability. But speak with, if you have a current financial advisor, speak with them. If they're unable to, then reach out to me. We can sit down, we can have a look whether or not it's beneficial for them.
All right, excellent stuff. Lowell is saying thanks for another terrific webinar, Carl. It's a pleasure. So I'll pass that on to the team here at Expats Portugal. Thanks for that. And team, yeah, if I can have the Dream Team link, you try saying it. That would be really helpful. Thank you very much indeed, Jackie or Astrid. So a Roth withdrawal, ROTH withdrawal, you'll know this, Marianne, would not be taxed under the NHR in Portugal. Is that right?
I don't know the answer to that one. So it depends, because no, sorry, it doesn't depend. Ignore me. It's late in the evening for me. From your Roth are tax-free. So they're tax-free, it's tax-free income. It should, under the treaty, because the treaty between the US and Portugal should identify that as a pension withdrawal that you've already paid tax on. You shouldn't need to pay tax in Portugal. Again, you need to seek specific tax advice and have a good tax advisor both in the US and in Portugal. The only exemptions are if you were to withdraw before you're age 59 and a half, or if you've had the Roth IRA for less than 5 years, it may be taxable and a 10% penalty may be applied. But again, if you tax advice.
Yeah, because it will still have to be declared, won't it? It would be declared in Portugal, and then it would be up to the authorities in Portugal whether or not.
Yeah, generally pensions are covered under the treaty. So ignoring the NHR, the dual taxation treaty between Portugal and the US identifies pensions and treats them in the same way. But you need a good Portuguese and a good US tax advisor that are working together so that it doesn't get missed or you don't get charged for something. And again, scan onto Henry. I feel like I need to have that written on my forehead. Scan onto Henry.
it's on the screen.
It's on the screen. Yeah.
All roads lead to Henry tonight. So thank you for that answer, Marianne, and that's helpful there, Amit. Let us know if you need further clarification on that. Excuse me. Thank you, Ken, for this point of order. The VAT does differ in the Açores and Madeira. So I was just focusing on mainland. So that's good to know. Thank you. The EVA in Azores and Madeiran Islands would be different. Cheers, Ken, for that. And a nice bit of help from Amit. Our Portuguese accountant said we can elect joint or separate each year on filing either as a couple or singly here in Portugal. Thank you, Amit. Really helpful. And Lowell telling me, hey, Carl, the EU citizen only needs a lease and a passport to get the residency permit. Yeah, that was, I think, was for Mark. If Mark is able to do that as a Netherlands resident, then they can go for the NHR, but you must be a tax resident. That's the all-important flick of the switch, isn't it? Tax residency to make sure you apply. Gail is thanking you both. I've booked a meeting with Henry. Just a note, so that it's all working, the technology. CPP/OAS. I won't guess any more at abbreviations because I got myself into trouble before, but I have CPP/OAS government pensions and an RRIF, and an LIF and a TFSA, which I'm sure means a lot more to you than it does to me, Henry, from Gail there. Thank you very much. Are US mutual funds advisable for Portuguese residents? What would you say to that from Anonymous, Henry?
Sorry, repeat that for me, please, Carl.
Are US American mutual funds advisable for Portuguese residents? As in, I'm guessing that's an expat now resident in Portugal as a tax resident.
You want me?
Yeah, Mary. Yeah, sorry, I was going to say.
That's okay. So as a general rule of thumb, US mutual funds are great. They work in the States, they work in Europe. They don't have gross roll-up of tax, which is what the States hate. However, there's a small number of US mutual funds that you are able to hold if you're not a US resident. So within my portfolios, I hold US mutual funds. But a lot of mutual funds, if you're not resident in the States, you're not allowed to hold them. But absolutely, if you've got ones and you're holding them, continue to hold them because they work in Europe and in the US from a tax perspective.
Okay, very good. I'm busily making sure everybody's got the Dream Team link for about half an hour's time as well behind the scenes here. Thank you for your help, Lowell. Thank you for that question, Anonymous. And tax residents have until 31st of March to apply for the NHR. As was said earlier on, there's no harm in repeating that tonight. The deadline is tight after that sudden announcement. Issa, good evening. I have one question about financial planning, please, regarding tax calculation of rental income and capital gains when only one spouse is moving on the D7 to Portugal. Here's the scenario. All the properties are in the wife's name and not jointly owned with her husband. She is moving with her son on the D7 and her husband will join after a few years. How is rental income and capital gains treated for tax purposes? Will she pay taxes on 50% of the income and capital gains only? Is that another one for Duarte at 9?
Yeah, and also that's very specific. So if you want to book in and speak to me about that, then do so.
Okay. All right, Issa, you know what to do. And yeah, join us. What I'll do is I'm going to give you the answer of the Dream Team link as well to your question. Now, I'm hoping everyone else can see these. So I'm doing that now and hoping that everyone's got those. I think we've satisfied John, who's saying all done there. Will I be... Oh, no, another one from John. Will I be taxed on UK NS&I bonds in Portugal when I'm resident in Portugal? Marianne, do you think to that?
No, that is definitely that will be, and that's one thing like the ISA that's highly tax efficient from a UK point of view. But once you're in Portugal, it will lose all of its benefits.
Interesting. Okay, I bet you're glad you asked that, John, to know what. It's not great news, but at least you know where you stand. With that, Rosemary, thank you. We have a US Roth investment coming due 5 months prior to the end of our NHR. Will withdrawing funds closing the account be beneficial with regard to Portugal taxation? What do you think?
I would get booked in, Rosemary. Your US Roth is tax-free in the States. Again, I can't remember the guy's name earlier that we discussed this with. It forms part of the US Portugal tax treaty under a pension. So you shouldn't pay tax on it in Portugal if you don't need the funds. I wouldn't close the account for any reason. You also don't have to take it at 59.5. You can take it older if you don't need the income from it. Speak to Henry, get booked in. We'll have a chat with you. We'll get some tax advice for you. And we can look at how we can structure that. So you either, if you don't need all of the income in one go, we can give you a monthly or an annual income from that rather than closing the account. Because if you close it, you're closing it at the value it's at. If we can grow it and work with you, maybe more beneficial. So again, booking with Henry.
Yeah, we need a t-shirt, don't we? Booking with Henry t-shirts and mugs are available at the merch table. Right. Rosemary is saying my age will be 59 and a half years old at that point. But I think what you said stands there. And Rosemary, you know what to do. I had a little flicker of my lights then. I did explain to Henry earlier on that we have had 1 or 2 power cuts with the extreme weather here in Portugal. If I should crash out of the webinar, I do apologise, but you'll know why now I've said that. I'll just remind you because that little flicker is quite unnerving. It seems okay for the time being. How will my overseas interest income, this is Arab, tax paid at source, how will that be treated without NHR? Can you decode that for us, either of you?
I think the gentleman this afternoon or this evening later will be able to address that, because it's the structure, it's the location. There's many factors to consider there rather than just overseas interest. Okay,
so that the link for you there, Arab. And Amit, thanking you. Thanks a lot, says Amit. So it's a pleasure. And don't forget the link. No, I haven't, Lowell. I'll just make sure I'm sending it to you directly as well for the dream team as well. That's done. Great info on this webinar. Thanks, everyone, says Erica. It's a pleasure. Thank you, Carl, says Anonymous there. And who was the person who answered my question about NHR for one with a Dutch passport? Passport and lease is sufficient to request NHR. Can I reach out to that person? That was Lowell who said that. And yeah, stay tuned and join us for the next call, and we'll give you further information on what to do. But basically, if you've got the Dutch passport, basically the idea is that you can rock up at your local town hall here in Portugal and claim residency as an EU citizen.
Yeah.
For you there. So I hope that's helpful to you. That might have been great news for Mark tonight and speed up the process. But you've got to do that first before you become a tax resident. You've got to get the residency part first, done first before you become a tax resident. Thank you very much, Jackie, for that. Great info on this webinar. Thank you for your kind comments tonight. And yeah, Erica, the chat is disabled, but the Q&A is working where you put that message. So anything we can do for you in these last few minutes, do let us know, Erica. Thanks, everyone, says Colin. Good evening to you, Colin. Lovely to see you here. Hope you're well. If the QR code isn't working for me, says Anonymous, is sending email. Hard as that might be to believe.
I failed.
It does. I mean, to be fair, there are a lot of variables, and it doesn't always work with people's smartphone cameras. However, henry.kent@holbornassets.com will suffice. Yeah. Anonymous, and yeah, sending an email to Henry is the best idea for setting up a meeting. Will Henry? It's a question about your well-being here, Henry. Will Henry get any sleep coming up in the days, and will he need a coffee fund?
I will.
A crowdfunder for Henry's coffee fund will be announced. There's probably another QR code for that as well, but that's very kind of to ask that. And the Roth is not a pension, says Carlos. Good evening to you, Carlos. And I believe it's taxed in Portugal only on capital gains. A comment from Carlos. What's the most common tax deduction, or what are the most common tax deductions in Portugal? I'm not sure what that means, actually, Sandra. Do either of you, can you throw any light on that?
Not sure.
Okay. Sandra, again, stay tuned. There's a lot more scope for having taxation questions answered in the next session at 9, and I will make sure you've got that link as well. I'll do that right away. Great webinar, says Pat, this evening. Thanks all. It's a pleasure. I'm speaking on behalf of Henry and Marianne here. And the last question then, is there a minimal income investment level that one needs for working with Holborn to be practical? If this question was answered earlier, please ignore it. It didn't get answered earlier. Is there a minimum amount at which people can get involved with Holborn, Henry?
No, it all depends on whether or not we're actually going to add any benefit or our services are suited. So there are no minimums. It's just whether or not our income, investment and tax strategies exceed any fees, and our services are suited for that particular person. But without an introduction meeting, we don't know. Let's sit down.
So guess what, Anonymous? Scan that code and set up an appointment with Henry. And that applies, of course, to anyone who wants to further satisfy their curiosity tonight. Great job, Henry. Great job, Marianne. Let's go back to you for closing comments this evening. Ladies first, Marianne, what would you say in closing tonight?
Thank you all for your time this evening. I know sometimes speaking about finances can be a little bit boring and a little bit dull. My family actually hate me sometimes when I speak about work. But it's really important if you're at this stage in your life, especially if you're looking at relocating into Portugal, if you get everything in order as soon as possible, ideally before you make the move. If you're there, it's not the end of the world. We can help you. We can sort it out. Henry and I, between us, have many contacts, not just in Portugal, the UK and the States, but actually all over Europe, really. And through our companies, we have coverage pretty much most places. We can help, and I'm going to say it again, but contact Henry. He will then have a look at if you need me at all, or, you know, if you need any contacts with me, but not necessarily my investment help, we can definitely help you or point you into the right direction to get you the help that you need. But really, just thank you for your time.
Well said, Marianne. And it's one of those things, isn't it? If you grasp the nettle now, so to speak, you can save yourself a whole lot more pain and remorse later on with something you might have missed out on. So it's well worth having a conversation, which is a message. So thank you very much. I'm sure that's a message that Henry will reiterate as well.
Definitely.
Over to you, Henry, in closing.
Yeah, thank you very much, Carl. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Marianne, as well, for attending. I hope everyone's found it very useful and informative. I know it's not, as Marianne said, the most exciting of topics, but yeah, as I said earlier, be proactive rather than reactive to your finances, and you should enjoy your time in Portugal.
Superb. Thanks, Henry. Thanks, Marianne. And join us. I think everyone's got the dream. Everyone's got the QR code, and everyone's got the dream team link now for your next steps from here. So thank you very much for being here. Stay in touch via expatsportugal.com and get involved in the community. Share your information. Ask questions over on the forum expatsportugal.com. So it just remains for the wonderful Vincent to take care of things behind the scenes for us. Thank you very much for being here. And the recording will be available on Sunday at around 6 o'clock Portugal time. Thank you, everybody.